In this video, I'm going to show you some practical ways that you can use the window function in Power BI. We're going to go through these 3 different practical examples step by step so you can follow along as well. All of that and more. So without further ado, let's get started. Hi, my name is Fernan and welcome to the Solutions Abroad YouTube channel, where we cover tips, tricks, and best practices when working with Power BI. I upload new videos every week, so make sure you hit that subscribe button and the bell icon to get notified when a new one is out. So the window function is a relatively new DAX function that came out, I think, this year. And it's a function that lets you get sort of multiple rows or range of rows based on its position within your table. And just describing it that way already sounds a bit confusing. But essentially, how I think of the window function is essentially a means to use in combination with functions like calculate or any of the iterator functions. And it just lets you define the filter contexts on what's being evaluated in those functions. So here we're looking at the documentation briefly, just to see if we can glean what window function is and what it basically is used for. So you can see here that it says that it returns multiple rows which are positioned within the given interval. That's also a bit too vague for me, if I'm being honest. We have a list of parameters here that is quite extensive. A lot of them are optional, so we won't need to use all of them. So we'll come back to this in a second. But essentially, the return value of this is a row, multiple rows within that window. And there's a lot of things here, but the key thing and a good thing to start with here is the example here, which is essentially the main kind of use case of the window function. So this, for example, lets you get the 3-day average price of, let's say, our unit price here by changing the context of that average X using the window function. So we're going to try and first start by replicating this within our own data set. So here is a blank, here's a very simple Power BI report that I prepared for you today. It's just for simplicity's sake, we are using Northwind dataset, which is a company that sells grocery goods internationally. I've already created some relationships here just to make it fast and easy, but the idea is that they sell goods at different price points and different dates. So we just want to make sure that the dataset is sort of modeled that way. Along with that, I've already created a few things like calendar table, which is best practice to do. So we have a month grouping here. We just created it in DAX. It's pretty simple. And we've also created a measures table here, which just has one measure, total sales, which calculates the total sales by looking at individual orders, quantity, and unit price for those products. So here in our report page, as you can see, I've already visualized the different months and the total sales for all of those products in chronological order. So we can see that for each month, let's say July, it's 30,000, August is 26,000. And let's say what we want to have is for every single month that we have here in our calendar table, we want to get the 3-month average price. So how do we do that? So let's start by writing our measure here. So we're going to name it 3-month average. And what we're going to do is we're going to start with the window function, just because there's a lot of parameter to fill in. So what we're going to start with is we're going to use -2, and we're going to use the relative here as the type. So -2 means that within this relative context, so 0 will be your current relativity. So in that case, for July, it will be 2 points before July. It sounds a little bit confusing, but I think I'll be able to explain it better once we actually have the example on the table. But the idea is we're setting the from, where the window starts and when the window ends. Now, since we need the 3-month average, we need the start will be 2 months before the current month, and then we will use 0 relative. So the end, or the 2, will be the current month that you are in. Next, it's saying it's relation, but what it is basically the table that you want to evaluate your window in. So in this case, we're going to use the function summarize. And from here, we're going to use calendar, but we need to wrap it with all selected just to make sure that there is a row context in this. So we're going to use calendar like this, and we're going to give it, and we're going to group it by the month within that calendar table. So month is not just month name or month number. It's a dates column grouped into the various months. So we don't really need to worry about checking the years or checking the month number. We're just using the month like this. And then the next thing is one of the optional parameters that you can add with the window, which is order by. So again, this helper function is something that came out recently as well, and it just lets you sort of control how that table is kind of ordered in order to apply the window. Now in this case, because the calendar month is already organized chronologically, we don't really need to do this. So in fact, actually, we can just stop here and just hit enter, and then we can just use this function and we can add the average X. But just as a demo, I want to show you how to write the order by. So typically you would say and define here how your table is ordered. So here we're going to say we want to order it by calendar month, and you want to order it ascending. You can add multiple values here if you want to order by different columns, but for now we're going to leave it like this. So now the window function is complete, but obviously it's not really evaluating anything yet. We need to average the values within these windows, because as it is right now, it will just give us previous 3 months of every current month. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use average X at the front here, which asks for 2 parameters: the table you want to evaluate, which in this case we've already done. That's the point of the window. And then the second part is what you actually want to evaluate. So in this case, we just want to evaluate total sales like this. So if you hit enter, you drag it here like this, and there we go. So as you can see now, we are getting the average, the 3-month average on every single month. So October's total sales will be October, September, and August divided by 3 would give you 31,000. And that's what window function does. So it looks at the current context. So if I just pull it up again, it looks at the current row context that you are on, so which month you are on, gets the 2-month point relative to the current row, current month that you have, and then does the average across those. So I hope that wasn't too confusing. And actually, in fact, it looks a bit intimidating, but it's actually pretty simple to use, right? So let's go through another example. So let me just remove the 3-month average here from our table. And let's say, using this table once again, what we want to do is we want to get the highest selling month across this table, but we want to see and get the highest selling month for each year. So 1996, 1997, 1998. And we don't necessarily want to group them. I just want to be able to see them in the same row month on month view. So the window function can also help us with sort of that kind of scenario. So let's start again by writing our measure here. So I'm gonna just name it highest selling month by year. Again, we're going to use the window function, and then we're going to use 1. And instead of relative, we're going to use absolute. So absolute, and there's more details about this in the documentation itself, is the absolute position that you use within the window function. So the absolute kind of numbering system starts with 1. So when you write 1 here, it means that at the very beginning of your partitions, that's where it needs to start. The 2, which is the endpoint, if we use -1 absolute, that means that we mean the end of the current partition or the window. So whatever range you are, just give me the end of it. So that's what -1 means in absolute terms. So from here, we're going to type, we're going to again define the table, the relation table that we want to evaluate into. And that will be the summarize. Let me just double check. No, I haven't put closing bracket there. And then again, we're going to use all selected on the calendar table. We're going to add year, but we also want to add month as well, because we want the granularity to be in the month. Or we're adding year because we want to use the year for something else. And that option is for the partition by. So we have a few optional parameters, and in like order by, for example, but we don't really want to define anything. So you can just leave it blank, just add another comma. And this one also we don't really need. The one that we need is partition by. So this function, it lets you kind of create groups for your window function. So in our case, because we want to get the highest selling month for each year, we want to create a partition by year so that we are always getting for whatever current year that row is in, give me the highest selling month for that year. So partition by lets you define that. So let's start typing partition by, select year like this. And that's really it. So we've done the window function. We'll just now wrap it with an iterator. So max x like this. Again, we've already defined the table. We just need to define the expression now, which again is just the total sales. You now hit close and drag it into the table here. So as you can see, for every single year that we have, 1996, for example, it gives us 50,000 because that's the highest selling month within 1996. Same thing with 97, it gives us 134,000. Sorry, 1997 is 77,000 here. And then for 1998 is 134,000. If you wanted to get a yearly average instead of the highest selling month, you can also use the same formula, but instead of using max x, you can use the average x, which just gets all of the total sales across those months and gets the average. So this will give you the average total sales or monthly total sales within that year. So lastly, let's talk about how you can use the window function to get cumulative sales. Now, in a recent video that I covered, I made a video around how you can create Pareto charts within Power BI. And a part of that formula is to get the cumulative total sales for all the different product categories that you have and basically getting the percentage off of it. What's interesting about that solution is it's not based on sort of time format like we currently work on right now with seeing it by month. Is actually based on categorical values. And while that works as a solution, the window function is a good alternative that sort of simplifies the process. Instead of having to create sort of multiple parameters or multiple variables, you can just use the window function to effectively look at the cumulative sales. So let's go through this together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new page here. And for the Pareto chart, we're not going to go through how to create the Pareto chart. I'm just going to show you how and what we need to do as the first step, which is the cumulative sales. So I'm going to bring in the total sales here, sorts its descending order. So we can see here beverages is the highest selling category. So for the Pareto chart, we need to create a percentage against the total, which means that in order to do that, we need to create a cumulative sales from top to bottom. So from the highest selling category down to the lowest selling. So for example, beverages, this row would have 286,000. When we go to the next row, dairy product, it will be 286,000 plus 251,000. And then meat and poultry will have the value of that plus 178,000, etc., etc. So we need to create a cumulative sales across all of these categories. So anyway, let me stop my rambling and let's just get on with the demo. So I'm going to start by just naming it cumulative sales by category. We're going to start with the window function once more. We're going to start with one absolute. So we want to start at the partition that we have, and then we want to end at the current value that we are on. So using absolute here means that we're always starting at the very top of our window, and 0 means that we're always ending at the current row context that we are on. So this is very important because we always want to get the cumulative sales. So if you just imagine the window function or this measure gets recalculated for every single row. When you hit, for example, confections, the absolute value or the absolute position will be from beverages, and then the 0 relative will be from confections. So that creates the window that you need, and that works across all your different rows. So now we're gonna type the relation, which is the summarize function here. Again, we're gonna use all selected. And in this one, we're going to use the all selected on the categories column or the categories table, because we want to use the category name as our grouping, right, for our table. And then lastly, we want to use the order by to make sure that the window that we're setting up is sorted by descending by total sales. So, so what we're going to do here is we're going to use the total sales measure as our means to order our table. and then we're going to say descending. And that's it. So you've set up the window function now. All we need to do is to create an aggregation to wrap this around. So in this case, we're just going to use calculate, and we're going to get total sales as the expression to calculate. Just make sure that it's formatted. Here we go. So now if I drag in that cumulative sales by category, you can see that it adds up for every single row, the value from that current row all the way to the very start. So that's what we set up in our window function with the absolute and relative values. And that's really it for this video. I hope these sort of practical examples given you a better understanding of how and when you can use the window DAX function in Power BI. Thanks for watching as usual. Give this video a like if you found it useful. Give it a dislike if you didn't, so I know to do better for next time. Ask your questions in the comment section box below so I can help you and you can help others. If you like this video, we have a Patreon page where you can support the channel and get exclusive perks like early access, demo files, and credits at the end of these videos. Thanks again for watching and see you in the next one. Bye bye.